My name's Chip Thomas, and I'm an alcoholic. Hi. I'm not sure I want to thank the committee or not for asking me to come up here, but I'll probably follow the form, and thanks very much. It's always a pleasure to share about Alcoholics Anonymous and being in Alcoholics Anonymous, and to do that just reinforces my ability to get another day sober. But I'll talk about that. You know, I'm wearing a coat and a tie tonight, and I wish I wasn't. But the reason I am is because there's some people around here tonight from the area where I stay sober all the time, and they'd tell my sponsor if I didn't. And my sponsor has been, has on more than one occasion denied me the right to say anything at an anniversary for somebody because I didn't dress for it. So rather, he used to be Attila the sponsor, but he's lightened up. I think that getting me through my early years of sobriety really kind of talked them in a little bit. The people that have them now, I think, have it kind of easy. But so anyway, so I thought I'd wear a coat and tie so as not to get in trouble later. Now, if you're an alcoholic, you have to see that as great strides. I mean, come on, did you drink one day at a time? Well, I'm trying to get sober one day at a time, look in the future a little bit too, so I don't want to get nailed by my sponsor, so I put on a coat and a tie. And there are only two of us in here with a coat and a tie on. David grabbed me before the meeting. He said, you wearing a coat and tie tonight? And I said, yeah, I have to. My sponsor will find out if I don't. He said, oh, I guess I better wear one too. So we compared notes, and we're very careful not to end up wearing the same thing. God, jeez, I love Alcoholics Anonymous, huh? All right, I don't want to complicate this, so let me tell you a little bit about what it was like, what happened, and what it's like for me. I am your garden variety drunk. You know, I like to go back now. It seems to me that if I look back far enough, I see myself looking for a way outside of myself long before I took my first drink. I was an adrenaline junkie when I was a kid. Used to run in front of cars with kids in the neighborhood so you could get the closest. Used to climb into high places where the risk of falling and being hurt was very real. And I pursued that sort of an endeavor for as long as I can remember, till now. You know, I still do that sort of thing. I did it while I was drinking. I did it before I was drinking. And I guess, you know, that's part of the deal. That's what's going on with me as an alcoholic. My drinking career really didn't kick off until quite late in life. I was 17. And, oh, sure. I drank some in high school. I drank some in junior high school. It's not particularly notable. It didn't cause me any problems or get me into any real trouble. But I got out of high school in 1966, and when I got out of high school, I joined the United States Army because I felt like I was probably John Wayne. Now, you got to understand something. I'm 5'6" tall, and at that time I weighed about 130 pounds. As you can see, this is not an uncommon attitude for an alcoholic to take. So I got out of high school and I joined the Army, and I went through basic training, and then I went through jump school, and along with everybody else I lined up to get my orders because I was going to Vietnam. That was the deal. That's what I wanted to do. I thought I'll be a hero, you know, get a little respect. Well, I cut the orders for everybody, and 156 people went to Vietnam, and I went to Germany. There's something interesting to tell you about Germany. In Germany, there's a beer called Export Hell, and this begins my drinking. This is the true name of that beer, it's Export Hell. And this is the beginning of my drinking career. Now I have to tell you that Export Hell comes in a 1-liter bottle, and it's 17% alcohol, and it has a little wire cap with a porcelain top and a rubber grommet on it. And if you hit the top just right with your fingers, it'll pop open. If you get it wrong, the porcelain top breaks and you cut your finger. That's a great idea. Not only can you drink, but it's recreational. So I'm sitting down here in a club, and a couple of people who, if I would never say anybody else is an alcoholic, mind you, but these guys grabbed me and said, hey, you want to go get something to drink? And I said, sure, because I would have said sure about anything. After all, I'm a paratrooper. We'll do anything. And we went over, we sat down in this club, and I had 3 of these beers. And at the end of the night, they said, it's time to go. And I said, okay. And just that clearly, I said, okay. And I stood up, and I fell over. And my mind was fine. I could talk, but I couldn't walk. My whole body wouldn't move. You'd have thought I was paralyzed. Hell, I thought I was paralyzed. They picked me up and carried me back to the barracks and put me in the bed, and I went to sleep. And the next morning, I got up and I thought, this is great. My arms and my legs worked again. I felt wonderful. What a wonderful idea. How'd I get this old and miss this? Life goes on. So what happened was, I found out that I like being drunk. It's a great thing to be. It's wonderful. I was 17 years old and grown men were listening to me. You know, and nobody listened to me before. I was just a troublemaker and just a kid in trouble all the time. And people were listening to me, and I was telling jokes, and people were laughing. And this was a neat deal. You know what it did? It made me fit in. That's what happened. And I liked that. And I pursued it from that point on with some real dedication. There are some basic problems with being a drunken paratrooper, and I think I probably ought to explain some of those. Don't get ahead of me here. Okay. We used to go on these 2- and 3-week field exercises in a place called Grafenwehr. And if there's any military here who's been to Germany, they know about Grafenwehr. And there isn't anything there. You have some tanks, some German nationals, and some American troops, and this thing. So the problem then becomes getting alcohol if what you want to do is drink. So you pack your rucksack and your drop sack if you're taking one, and you put beer in it. Now, if you haven't thought this through, if you're going to jump out of an airplane and you're going to land on the ground and you want to get your beer down there, it doesn't help if it breaks. Now, I don't know, everybody who hasn't known one has certainly seen a movie with an old sergeant in it. And old sergeants do not take well to rucksacks with broken beer bottles in them. The problem's obvious. They don't like that at all. So it became a packing nightmare, both to jump with enough beer to get me through the exercise and not to have it break and be all over your clothes and everything. It was a problem. Now, if you've ever gone for a long walk, you know what carrying weight's all about. You know about packing. So here I am. Once you get on the ground, all the romance about being a paratrooper is gone. Then getting from A to B, you do it on your feet. And you got to take everything with you. And it mounts up to a lot of weight. So you got this poor troop here with a rucksack full of beer and a long way to walk. It's an easy solution. Now I'm going to share it with you in case anybody gets into this situation. You drink the beer while you're still fresh. Anytime you want to, you can pop out of the exercise and hit a bush. It's a self-correcting weight problem. It's only heavy in the beginning. Once it's inside you, it's no problem, and you get rid of it as you go. It works out great. A couple of months after that, somebody introduced me to blackberry brandy. Now, I don't recommend it as a drink. I just don't. But you can put a whole lot more of it in a whole lot less space in a backpack, and I stopped having problems with breakage at that point. Littler bottles easier to pack. And I kind of took care of that. Well, let me get back to this going to Vietnam stuff. Turned out the reason that I was the only one that didn't go is I was the only one that wasn't yet 18 in my training cycle. I wasn't old enough to go. So I've been over in Germany for a little while, and I put in a thing called a 1049, which is a military request for transfer to a combat zone. And the Pentagon, in its infinite wisdom, said, sure, you can go. We need people like you over there. And they certainly didn't. But that'll become clear in a minute. So I got orders to go, and I came home 2 days before Thanksgiving in 1967, all ready to go to Vietnam on leave. And I am a hot-shot little paratrooper. I weigh pretty close to 150 pounds now. You know, I'm getting to be a real big guy. I'm not any taller. I'm just a little heavier. And so the very first night I'm back in town, and I lived in Baltimore at the time, and in the northern part of Baltimore, and I'm sure some people know about it, is Northwood. And I went up Marble Hall Road and ran through a stop sign at roughly 80 miles an hour. And one of Baltimore City's finest observed this action on my part and thought it was a bad idea. So he pulled me over, and three things happened. They impounded my car and sent it to Pulaski Highway. And every town's got a Pulaski Highway. It's the last place in the world you want your car to go, trust me. And the second thing they did was they put me, the third thing they did was lock me up. Second thing they did was take the policeman to the hospital. I was little, but I was very mean. And he wasn't expecting it. But it was just fair enough. So I got to tell you, back in those days, it wasn't like it is today. If there are any recent DWIs in the room, you know you're 9 months away from court. Well, I was 2 weeks away from court. 3 days later, the notice hit the mailbox, and 2 weeks after that, I was standing in front of a judge. And I was there, and the prosecuting attorney was there, and my attorney was there, and the judge says, "Where is the officer?" "We don't know." And he said, "You're out of here. You can leave." I had orders for Vietnam. Without the complaining officer, they couldn't keep me. He was still in the hospital. Okay? Yeah, when I get up to talking about the ninth step, we'll finish that part of this off. So they turned me loose, and that was the first time I brushed with the law for absolutely no cost. No cost whatsoever. I finished up my leave. Nothing much happened. I stayed moderately drunk as usual and went on about my leave, and I went to Vietnam. And I'm going to sum Vietnam up for you very quickly. There were long periods when it was real boring, and it was either hot and dry or hot and wet. And there were little short periods when it scared hell out of you, and it wasn't boring at all. The only other thing of interest about that time is, well, two things actually, but one is Black Label beer. I don't know if anybody here remembers Black Label beer. Well, a lot of old guys around here like Dudley. I'm sure they do. We used to get Black Label beer. I was down in a place in place called Dong Tam, which was down in the Delta. And we used to get Black Label beer in pallets, 144 cases, and they would bring it in on boats, and they would leave it sit in the sun. And the obvious problem there is how do you get the beer out of the can and into you, or a bottle, I guess it was, I don't remember. But that was a big logistical problem because it was so hot. But worked it out. And you can get good and drunk on hot beer. That works real fine. The only other thing of interest about that period of time is I went to Australia on R&R. Now, Australia has a beer called Victoria Bitters. And it comes in a 1 liter bottle, and it's 15 or 16% alcohol, and it's great. And at the Bondi Hotel in Bondi Beach, Australia, room service will bring in ice cold Victoria Bitters beer 24 hours a day. And that was great. It did create a little problem. I stayed drunk the whole time I was there. There are only 3 things I remember about being in Australia. The first one is that there are fires all over the outback from lightning hitting those bushes. And that's pretty interesting. It doesn't occupy your attention long, but it's pretty interesting. The second thing, of course, is room service and Victoria Bitters beer. That's excellent. The third thing is the girls would come to the beach. And if you watch surfing, you've seen Bondi Beach. It's a big surfing beach. And the girls would come to the beach, the Australian girls, and they would lay out their blankets, and they would take off their clothes, and they would put on their bathing suits, and they would go swimming. At the end of the day, they'd take off their bathing suits and put on their clothes, and they would leave. This is not important to the story. It's one of the 3 things I remember about Australia. I like to go back, and if I do, I want to stay at the same hotel, and I'd like the same room. That's pretty good. I came home, and I finished up what little service time I had left to do in Fort Knox, Kentucky. And there really isn't anything much to that story. I got out of the military, and I came home and moved back in with my parents for a couple of months. I married the girl at that point who I'd been dating in high school. She's a lovely, lovely girl, blonde, blue eyes, 5'2", and just exactly as the description leads, that's what she looked like. And it was this absolutely beautiful picture, and I'm going to share it with you. We bought a little house in the country, we had a little girl, and I had a dog. And you got to see this. We're standing out in the backyard, and there's this pear tree. And here we are under the pear tree, this beautiful little girl, this beautiful woman, the little girl, and me, and the dog, and I'm moderately drunk. These things happen to me. And everything went along as you would expect it to do. Now, I want to stop for a minute and define a term. It's important to me because it may not be an accurate definition, but this is the premise that I deal from. I was a maintenance alcoholic. And what a maintenance alcoholic is to me is somebody who drinks roughly the same amount of alcohol every day in gradually increasing amounts. That's what it is to me. And every now and then you go out and get really drunk, but that was recreational. The other was necessary. So I worked for the Firestone Tire and Rubber Company, and I was a salesman. I was a good salesman. I always made my quota, and they were very happy to have me. And so the picture just goes like that. But after we'd been married for coming up on 5 years, my wife said to me, "You drink too much." And I said, "Okay, what's your point?" And she, and she said, "You got to stop." And I said, "You don't understand. I'm not stopping." And I left. And I packed my stuff, and I went down the street about a half a mile, and I moved in with a girl I'd been seeing on the side. I don't want to hear it. You've all got your own little deals to worry about. This is mine. I'm not necessarily proud of it. It's just the way it went. So I got a divorce from my first wife, and I married my second wife. And I don't repeat the same mistakes too often. She was a little taller than I am. I'm still only 5'6". She had auburn hair and gray eyes, and she was like just a lovely woman, and she was great. And I guess that's a pretty fair statement. And you got to see this picture. We bought a little house in the country. We had a baby girl. I got another dog. And you see the picture, and here we are in the backyard of the suburban house, and here's the beautiful wife and the daughter and me, and I'm moderately drunk. God, I don't know what happens here, huh? You know? And there are some other things that I got to talk about here. Now, during the time I was married to my first wife, I got my first DWI. And I have to tell you that the system did not deal well with me. I went in there, and I went to the some sort of a screening deal, and I sat down with a woman who took down all this information, and we had a 40-minute discussion, and then we went out to dinner and continued the discussion, and the upshot of it was I was certainly a social drinker, and I shouldn't have any problems with this at all. And I had to go to 3 AA meetings. Now, I went to those meetings in Essex. I lived in Towson. And I went to those meetings in Essex because I didn't want to see anybody I knew. Now, if you haven't seen the hole in that logic, let me explain it to you. If you see somebody you know in an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, who are they going to tell? What's the problem? But I wasn't smart enough to know that. So I'd had that. Now, I'm married to my second wife, and I'm out working one day, and I was down in Baltimore at a place called Gay Street, and that's like the Loop in Chicago, or a certain section of Philadelphia. Some of you may know, those of you that travel that way. And it's where the strip joints are and all that. And I was parked outside of a pharmacy next door to the police station, and I'm getting a pack of cigarettes. And I don't feel good. I just don't feel good. You never had a hangover. I'm telling you, my teeth hurt. My nails hurt. And my hair hurt. It was a bad hangover. And I don't know what happened. I just had a terrible hangover. And I'm in there buying these cigarettes, and behind the woman's head, I see this whole rack of little bottles. Miniatures. That guy needs a raise. What a wonderful idea. Now, I had never seen a miniature before. Now, I'm sure I had, but it hadn't impacted me. But that day, that morning, I said, give me 2 of those. And I got 2 vodka miniatures. And I put them in the trunk of a dark green Mustang. It was August. It was about 99 degrees. And I drove around with them. And I kept thinking about them. And boy, did I want one of those miniatures. I mean, that would help. Yeah, I heard somebody say they never had a morning drink at a meeting the other day. And I thought to myself, don't you have friends? Did anybody ever tell you that's the answer? And So I find this place where nobody can see me because I certainly don't want anybody making character judgments about me drinking a little bottle of vodka that time of the day. So I go in the trunk, and I open the trunk, and I get a bottle of vodka out, a little bottle of vodka. And you ever take out a freshly burned out light bulb? Well, I'm tossing this back and forth from hand to hand because this is hot. Now, I'm back in the car, and I'm still tossing it back and forth. Now, see, I'm not stupid, and I got an idea. It seems to me that I can drink soup or coffee too hot for me to stick my finger in. Now, you know that. And I needed an idea because I wanted that vodka. And I figured out that if I could get that in my mouth before it burned a hole in my hand, I would be okay. That's the deal. And so I got all my intestinal fortitude together, and I stopped throwing it back and forth, and I knocked the top off it, and I threw it up real fast, and I threw the bottle on the floor of the car, and it went down my throat, it hit my stomach, and it started to roll around, and it headed back up again. Now, I don't like to say this, but it's an honest program, and I have to share this with you. I puked through my nose. Oh, fine. There are no nasty personal habits in this audience. I'm sure of that. Now, this is not the first time I have ever puked. So I know what to do. So it starts coming up, and I throw my hands up to cut off my nose. 3 things happened. First thing that happened was I didn't get a good seal. So I puke all over my suit. I'm at work. Did I mention that? I puke all over my suit. And the third thing is I broke my damn glasses. The next day, I pulled over. It's August. It's hot, I'm in a dark green car, and I don't feel good. And I go get that other bottle out of the trunk, and I'm throwing it back and forth. Now, you see, this time, I'm ahead of the game, because I already know that it won't burn my mouth. So I hunch back in the seat, and I take my glasses off, and I put them on the dashboard. And I knock it back, and it goes down my throat, hits my stomach, rolls around, it comes back up. No problem. Boy, I'm telling you, that just made the rest of my day. Gosh, that was great. So anyway, to bring this into context with the rest of the story, I'm back here. Me and my second wife were out on a lawn with the dog and the baby, and she says to me, "You drink too much." Oh, fine. And I say, "What's your point?" I've been through this before. I know the dialogue. And she says, "You have to stop." Now, what I thought and didn't say was, "Hi, you knew how I drink when you married me. What's the big deal?" But I don't say that. I say, "No. I have long learned that you do not offer negotiation if you're not going to negotiate." This wasn't, "Well, I think you're wrong and maybe I ought to drink less because I don't want her coming back with anything else." I'm not a dummy, I told you that. No, I'm not stopping. Well, things progressed and got worse. And the upshot of it was we sat down and had a family meeting a couple of days later, and we talked it over, and I made a few phone calls, and my second wife and my youngest daughter put their stuff in the car and went up the street and moved in with my first wife. Now you gotta think like an alcoholic. Let's get up to speed here. I gotta send child support checks. I've got a much better shot of getting it done if I only need one address. Huh? I'm never going to have to worry about forgetting where somebody lives because they all live in the first house I lived in. This could work. It did work for 18 months they lived together. Hell, they still spent a lot of time together. That's great. Putting them together, there'll be something more about that in the ninth step as well. Just you wait. It was wonderful. So they're gone. And of course, at this point in time, I have to tell you that by this time, I just gotten my third DWI. The second one, nothing happened either. You know, I didn't even go to meetings on that one. Well, actually, it was not a DWI. It was a hit and run. And it happened on Harford Road, as a matter of fact, up around the 5600 block, if it makes any difference. And I had my wife's car. I don't like to do these things in my car. And I had lost control of it and slid into a parked car at 2 o'clock in the morning coming home from Fells Point. You know, I mean, it's a perfectly reasonable thing to do. And at 2 o'clock in the morning, there were 13 people standing out there, and they all called the cops. Here we go, 6 o'clock in the morning, bang, bang, bang on the door. My wife opens the door. They say, we're looking for the owner of this car. She says, this is my car. And they said, well, you were in a hit-and-run accident last night. She says, no, it wasn't. My husband had the car. So, well, do you know where he is, ma'am? Oh, yeah, he's in the bedroom. Well, could we come in? My wife. Sure. For you Al-Anons out there, that is not the right answer. Okay? The answer is, got a warrant. You know, something equally interesting. So they come back in there, and I'm ashamed of this, but I'm going to share it because I think that's one of the ways we get better in Alcoholics Anonymous. They came back in there, and remember, I'm 150 pounds, 5'6", these are big cops. Up off the bed I come, the handcuffs go on behind my back, and they frog march me. Ever been had handcuffs on, had cops helping you? Huh? And they frog march me out, throw me in the back of a stinking patrol car. Somebody had puked in that sucker already, and it wasn't me. I didn't have any vodka. And they marched me. Now, there is one thing I left off here. I was wearing Paisley underwear. They took me down to the Garrison police station and threw me in the holding tank. Now, I have some advice for those of you who are contemplating a stretch in jail, the local jail. Don't do it in your underwear. Not all the guys that spend time in those places are heterosexual. Now, I don't particularly care what your sexual proclivity is as long as it is named at me. And your position is at best uncomfortable in Paisley underwear. And being little. You know? And so I got out of there okay, but there were some tense moments. I don't want to do that again. So anyway, so we got my second wife has moved in with my first wife, and my kids are all living together, and everything is hunky-dory. I'm living in the other house. I kept a dog. Yeah, I got to have a dog. I've always had dogs. I have 3 dogs now, but that's later. So everything is going fine. And as time passes, we got a divorce, and things went on, and I sent the checks and all that. My company, at that time, I was working for C&P Telephone Company. They're the people that supply the phones here, by the way. If it doesn't work, they're probably at fault. I don't mean that. Had sent me to school in Washington. They're always sending you to school for something. And I'm in the Washington Sheridan, and the school, it's Thursday afternoon, and I have cut school. Now, there are 11 guys in the class. I know they're not going to miss me. And I am in the bar at the hotel. And these people who worked across the street at this multinational computer corporation, their 7th floor, which was their executive wing, they were having a little strategy meeting in late afternoon, and they had come over to the bar to have a few drinks. Everything was done. They were getting ready to go home. And I really, really liked the looks of one of the women in the group. She was really beautiful. And I was between wives. And I'm unaccustomed to that. I like being married. You know, I'm not real good at maintaining it, but I like being married. And, well, you know your faults, you can work on them. That's the way that is. So I knew the bartender in there real well because I'm going to give you another hint. You'd have a slip, go back out there. Remember, it's important. If you're at a bar and you like quick service and you don't like running out of a drink, every time you get a drink, give the bartender $1. And they're always pay attention to you, promise. Really does work, especially if you're in there having 6 or 7 drinks an hour. You know, they're doing well and you're not running out of drinks. It's a good deal. So I talked it over with the bartender and we sent her a drink. And the upshot of it was about 30 minutes later, we went out to dinner. And we ended up walking around the Washington Monument. I mean, this is very romantic. She'll tell you about it if you ask her. It was very romantic. I put my coat around her shoulders because it was a little chilly. I could be a gentleman. I really can. And especially if I want something. And I wanted something. And, oh, fine. Here we go again with that. And so the upshot of it was, now there's a discrepancy in this story. Now, my wife, Nancy, and I have a disagreement here. Now, you can decide. She's not an alcoholic, but I say 3 days. She says 5 days later I moved in with her. And I don't know who's right and who's wrong, and I don't really care. It's 3 to 5 days later I moved in with her. And so the end result was that I sold my second wife back the house that we live, so they don't live together anymore. And she since got married, and he swindled her out of the house, did a great job. He got the house in her next divorce, so I don't know what to tell you there. Oh, gee. So I'm living with Nancy down outside of Annapolis, and everything is going fine. And my drinking changed. Now, let me catch you up on how I drink at this particular point in time. Because I've alluded to the fact that I'm moderately drunk all the time. And my system at that point was pretty much all the same. 1 to 2 6-packs of beer, and a couple of miniatures or a shorty of vodka. And that took care of my day. That kept me where I wanted to be. And all my systems were working. My filters worked. I could maintain that level. Except for the times I really blew it off and got DWI or got arrested for breaking and entering or whatever it happened to be at the time. Well, I had a lot of trouble with the cops at one time or another. And my drinking changed, and it cut way down. I drank, generally speaking, a 6-pack of beer a night for probably most of a year. You know, I was pretty steady with that, and that's what I did. And we cemented a pretty good relationship. But what happened was that this cunning and baffling and powerful disease of ours laid in wait for a little while, and at the end of that period, I went right back to where I was. And then it started to change for me. And what happened was that I started drinking pretty much a fifth of vodka a day in one sense or another. Now, I have to tell you, or remind you, that I happen to like hot vodka. And, well, it grows on you, and if you haven't tried it, it's just too late. See, what you do is you take a couple of bricks, and you know, you may not know this, but underneath your car somewhere there's an exhaust pipe. And on the floor, right over the exhaust pipe, is warm. And you put a brick on either side of that, put the vodka bottle in the middle, and it keeps it nice and warm. You know, and that works real well. I did find something. I wish they did done this. I went into a liquor store one day, and I was in a hurry, and a guy said, "What do you want?" And I said, "Well, I need a fifth of vodka, and I like Wolfschmidt. I like that stuff that, you know, the grease lands on the top, and you can see the fumes. I like cheap vodka. I want to know what I'm drinking. I don't want anything like Absolute, you know, that kind of caresses your palate. No, I want to feel it." And so he hands me this bottle and this bag, and I pay him the money, and I run out to the car, and I shove it under there, and I go along, and I reach under to get it, and I bring it out, and the bottle is square. And I thought to myself, it's still in the bag, I thought to myself, what a great idea, I don't need the bricks anymore. They're putting it in square bottles. And I whipped the top off it, and I took a big drink out of it, and I thought I was going to die. It was awful. I took it out of the bag. It was gin. That's the worst thing I ever tasted in my life. And I'm going to tell you this, and this is absolutely true. As soon as I finished that bottle, I never bought another one. Great idea on the shape of the bottle. Lousy taste. Gets you drunk. Works, but it's lousy. But anyway, so what happened was, a couple of years later, and it had stopped working for me. You know, it had stopped working for me. And I want to back up just two more times. Just one time, two different items, actually. In 1971, I made my first entrance into Alcoholics Anonymous. I told you about that. I went to 3 meetings over in Essex. I actually didn't drink for about 6 months. The second time was in 1982, and I'd gotten another DWI, and the upshot of it was that they were sure that I was serious about not being in any more trouble and not drinking anymore and whatnot, and we agreed that I would go to Alcoholics Anonymous, and got sentenced to a monitor and all this other crap. And so I went to Alcoholics Anonymous in Ellicott City. As a matter of fact, I joined Ellicott City Tuesday night, which is now my home group. And I got a sponsor, Bill B., who had 13 years of sobriety at the time. And I went to meetings, and I got pretty much of a year. And I want to share something with you that's really important. And what it is was at the conclusion of that time, when I was to no longer be a sober individual, I had promised Bill that before I took a drink, I would let him know that I was going to. And I went over to his house one night and I knocked on the door. And he opened the door and he came out on the porch. And I said, Bill, I'm not an alcoholic. I don't need this program. This is not an issue for me. And I'm going to go out and have a drink tonight. And since I'm not an alcoholic, I can follow through. I'm telling you that's what I'm going to do because we agreed on that. And he looked at me and he said something that's really, really important. And I hope it's never important to me again, but I hope also never to forget it. And what he said was this: we'll be here when you come back. And that's the deal. Because not everybody's a first nighter. And it's real important to know that if it doesn't kill you being out there, you can come back. I went out for 3.5 more years. Cost me, I've mixed my marriages up a little bit. That's my second marriage, and a couple of more arrests, and things just generally went on. But anyway, I was telling you that my filter broke. It stopped working for me. And what happened was I could no longer predict how I was going to behave. I could any time go out and get drunk because I wanted to. I could at any time just maintain that level. And I lost that. If I hadn't lost that, you'd have somebody else here tonight. And the deal was I could drink 1 or 2 beers and be drunk. Or I could drink a 5th and a case and not get drunk. And I couldn't tell which was going to happen. And that's a horrible, horrible thing to happen to a practicing alcoholic. To lose my friend. Because that's what happened. I lost the rock that I had sacrificed marriages to, court dates, jails, jobs, promotions, my children. I was a violent alcoholic. I was not allowed to see my children for a long, long time. What happened was it stopped working. Now I want to tell you about my last arrest because I think it's kind of interesting and because it's a big part of the story. Because I'm going to get into what's serious about this for me now. I have a lot of fun with my story. I enjoy it. But what's really going on for me in Alcoholics Anonymous is the next piece of this. So this is what it's about. One Friday afternoon, at 6 o'clock in the evening, I was driving around the Baltimore Beltway, 695, over by Security Boulevard. And I got stopped by a state trooper. I was going 80 miles an hour. And I was driving a Porsche. And because on the outside, everything was wonderful with me. Okay? And what the deal was that you all know the Mario Andretti rule of drunken driving. No? Well, I'll share this with you real quick. Here's the thing. From 1 drink to 5 or 6, you're careful. You don't want to get caught by the cops. That's the deal. From 12 or 20 or whatever your benchmark is, you're not in a hurry. So the cops aren't going to catch you anyway. But from 6 to 12, I know how to drive. I'm fast. And I'm precise. Go ahead, give me a car length. Watch me maneuver. Huh? Anybody else know about that? Well, I was in the Mario Andretti phase of drinking that day. And I had a beer tucked between my legs, a Miller Lite, if you must know. And I got stopped, and the cop says, sir, I think you've been drinking. Real good. What was your clue? Was it the beer or my breath? You know? He said, come on back to the car. And we're going to take care of this. And he marched me back to the car, and they called another cop, and they searched the car. And there's some other interesting points I got to make to you. In the last year or so of my drinking, I was afraid of you. I was afraid of everyone. I had lost my ability to think and behave rationally. You know, in my office, people would leave me notes telling me that they had done this or that they wanted me to do this, depending on where you were in the pecking order, and I didn't get any visitors. And I would tell you that my company today is much better at facing people who drink on the job. But in those days, it was avoided pretty well. And I think there's a lot of a personal thing there. They did the best they can, and it wasn't very good at that time. And that's the way it was for me. And he marched me back there, and they brought another cop up, and I told you I was afraid. Under the front seat of my car was a .357 Dan Wesson Bulldog, and it was loaded. I carried that gun in the car. I'm going to break a mystery to you. Those of you that have ever seen street signs in the country with holes in them, that's from people like me who are practicing yanking their gun and shooting it. Yeah, I used to do that. And I was prepared to shoot you. Keep in mind that I spent a good many years with primary occupation of shooting guns. And that was the way I understood protecting myself. That was the deal. There was also a little can of pot under there and a pipe. And these two state policemen searched my car and they didn't find any of it. Now, I submit to you that that was my higher power. We'll see. So the story continues. They took me in and they booked me, and they said that I could call somebody, and so I called my wife, and there was no answer. You know, and I called some other people, and there was no answer. And I finally got hold of somebody who had been in my life previously, and they came and got me out of jail. And they took me back to my car, and they dropped me off in my car. Now, the state police had kept my keys. That was part of the deal. I'd asked them not to tow the car. I didn't want to go to Pulaski Highway. And and I'd agreed that they could keep the keys, and I'll come and get them the next day. Well, I'm a drunk, and I had one of those little magnetic boxes stuck to the car with extra keys in it. So I started the car, and I finished the 6 beers that were in the car on the way home. You know? And the next day, I got up, and I went to work. And when I got off work, my standard of behavior was to leave my office and go up to the Corinthian on Windsor Mill Road outside of Baltimore. And in there waiting for me would be a 6-pack of Miller Lite, change for a $10 bill, and a pack of Merit 100s. And because I didn't like waiting in line, me and the guy at the package goods store had a deal. Well, I didn't do that. I went home. And things got real bad for me. Things got very, very bad for me. I got a lot of help getting through the next little time because there was a whole lot of sweating and a whole lot of shaking and a whole lot of not sleeping. And I would say that if I ever saw anybody today in that condition, knowing what I know now, I'd take them to the hospital. And we just didn't do that because we didn't know enough, the we being my wife and myself, because that's really all there was. And about 10 days later, I had gone to see an attorney who is now in this program, who, of course, that's why he was my attorney. We drank together. And he said, you better go to Alcoholics Anonymous. You're in a lot of trouble this time. And I did that. And I couldn't see why. This was the littlest beef I'd ever had. This was just a DUI. You know, And so I went into the Alano Club in Columbia, Maryland. And a guy named Jay, who's still there, got up and came over to the door, and he took me by the hand, and he said, you belong here. You come and sit with me. And he did that. And there's some folks here that know him that are here tonight. And that's what he did. And he sat me down next to him, and I shook, and I watched, and I listened, and I went to another meeting that afternoon. And the next day, I went to 2 meetings. And I got to tell you, for my first 2 years in the program this time, I went to 2 to 3 meetings a day. And that was the beginning for me. You know, 9 months later, I was standing in front of a judge with my wife and with my sponsor. And I got done saying what I wanted to say, which was, I know that I was wrong, and that I had 9 months of sobriety, and I intended to work to keep that, and it was important to me that I do the right thing. And my sponsor said that he's working the steps. And that's all I can say. That's what he said. He said, he's working the steps, and that's all I can say about it. And the judge asked my wife how things were, and it was the craziest thing, just tears running down her face. And she says, this is the best thing that's ever happened to him. And I want to remind myself and tell you just one sentence that the arresting officer read of all the things that he read. And he said, he smelled like he was rotting. And what I want to share with you about that, for those of you who don't know what that is, I was suffering from malnutrition. I was down very low in terms of weight. Right now, standing up here, I weigh about 190 pounds. I weighed under 150 pounds when I got arrested, and I was dying. You see, I'd come to the end. There wasn't anything left for me. I wasn't functioning at work. I wasn't functioning at home. I couldn't successfully drink. Nothing was working for me. And then from out of nowhere, I get this ticket. And all the people who hitherto had never come up with any suggestions like this, I end up in an AA meeting. And apparently, for whatever reason, I could no longer ward off the grace of God. And I was able to pick up some time in this program. And I want to talk about that for a few minutes. This program is the greatest thing going on in the world as far as I'm concerned. Because one of the things that we share in common, whether you're here as an alcoholic or an Al-Anon, is the absolute known position that to some degree or another, alcohol has dramatically negatively impacted your life. And for some reason, whatever it happens to be, the magic of this program gives me something to hold on to so that I don't have to have a drink today. And I love being drunk. You know, don't misunderstand that. That's my, given the choice, that's where I'd be. Having lost the choice, I can't see anything but this program. So let me tell you a little bit about this program. I rejoined the same home group. I went back into Ellicott City Tuesday night. And about 10 or 15 days later, I was at a meeting with, geez whiz, what was that guy's name? I haven't been that long. It'll come to me. And this guy chaired a meeting, and he talked for 45 minutes on sponsorship. And I'm going to give you the upshot of what he said in one sentence. A sponsor is somebody that teaches you the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. That's the deal. And a few days after that, I'm sitting in the same Milano Club, and that's back when court slips were all the rage, and there was a pile of them. There was 80 of them on the table back there. And this guy came in to chair a meeting, and sitting in the back of the room, there was a guy reading a newspaper. And this guy And the guy said my name, and the guy reading the newspaper turned the page. And he stopped and he looked out there and said, "My name's Bruce, and I'm an alcoholic, and this is important to me, and if it's not important to you, you get the hell out of here." That's what he said. Yeah, exactly. That's right. And he went on and chaired a meeting, and he talked about the number of DWIs. I think it was 8 or something like that, and the kind of life that I understood, because you could hear the loss of hope, and that's what we're about in here. That's what it is. A definition of hope is the belief that things will be better tomorrow. Hopelessness is the belief that things are bad today and they're not going to be any better tomorrow. And he shared getting to that point of hopelessness, getting into the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, and getting better through the 12 steps. And at the conclusion of that meeting, I walked up to him and I said, "Would you be my sponsor?" Did, scared to death. Reasonable fear this time. I know what this guy was going to say to me. I had no clue. I'd never seen anybody like this. And what he said was, "Yes, and we're going to start to do some stuff." And what we did was we worked our way through the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. And because I think it's important, and because I happen to be up here, I'm going to share a little bit of that with you. Now, unmanageability, powerlessness over alcohol, and my life is unmanageable. And I've explained, for my purposes, my powerlessness over alcohol. I couldn't not drink by choice. And when I did drink, I couldn't not get drunk. Powerless over alcohol. My life's been unmanageable as far back as I can remember. I told you about those adrenaline rushes. That's the deal. The second step is came to believe that a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity. Now, I believe that sanity for everybody in here is different. It depends on where you start from. Now, I'm still crazy, but I'm not harmful crazy anymore. You know? And I've come to believe. I was raised a Quaker. I gave it up to become an airborne infantryman. I know. My family had a problem with that, too. But they never thought it was a good idea that I drank a fifth of vodka a day. So I came to believe. And what did I come to believe in? Wouldn't make any sense for me to share it with you. It's my higher power. But if you're having trouble finding one, try the last sentence on page 9 through page 16 in the big book. And that'll tell you how to go about finding one. It's all in the text. Made a decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of God as I understand Him. No problem. I can't do it. I can't do anything. I can't make it work. And if you need an example of that, pick any meeting you go to regularly, and sometime or other, an old-timer, and do it with an old-timer, will come into the meeting, and he'll say, he'll talk, and he'll say, I'm having the worst time with this, or this problem, yada, yada, yada. And you go back the next week, and you say, well, I tried this, and that didn't work. And you go back the next week, and I tried that, and that didn't work. And then, lo and behold, you say, I turned it over to my higher power. And you don't hear anything more about it. Well, go ask them. What happened? And they'll say, oh, I don't know, it just got all straightened out. I don't know what happened. Yeah, that's it. You look everywhere for God, and that's where you'll find Him. Okay, let's talk about that searching and fearless moral inventory for a minute. That's important stuff. It's real important stuff. If you don't know how to do a fourth step, open to 12 and 12 and find every sentence that's got a question mark at the end of it, write it down on a separate sheet of paper and answer it. This is not tough. Then pick somebody and call them up and say, I'll finish my fourth step. Will you hear my fifth step? And if they don't tell you this, do it anyway. There are 3 parts to the fifth step. Knowing it yourself, praying over it, and sharing it with another human being. Find yourself a mirror, sit down in front of it, and read what you wrote. And then ask your higher power to accept it for you. This is just one way to do this. The only wrong way is the one that you get drunk over. I believe that. And then go find that person, make that appointment like I did with Bruce, and go share that fourth step. Do your fifth step. It's the driver's license of Alcoholics Anonymous. It says in our 12 and 12 that failure to do this stuff forces even people with long-term sobriety back out. Just watch. You see them go. Honest to God. Not everybody's got to work the steps. Some people can go to meetings that'll rub off. The key to that is who's on that list. You know? It's easier just to do it. Do it. It's a big deal. One of 3 things will happen. You'll immediately feel better. You'll feel better slowly over the course of a couple of weeks. You know? Or a couple of weeks later, wham, it'll hit you. And you'll understand. And the next time you're at a meeting when somebody says, I did my fifth step, and you'll be able to sit there behind you and say, yeah, I did that. You know? It's belonging. The tough ones, 6 and 7. They're the deal. You know why they're tough? Because you got to do them for you, with you. You know? There are people in this audience that I sponsor. And I have, and will again, with any luck, if I live long enough and sponsoring the people that I'm working with now get that far, we'll go somewhere in a quiet room and get down on our knees, facing each other, holding hands, and talk about what it says for 6 and 7 in the big book. Personally, I like that better than the 12 and 12. Either way, it's going to work. Honest to God, it's going to. But that's where you become willing to accept the you that you are, and the things that you're not willing to accept, you become ready to change. And then you ask God for help to change those character defects, and the trick is, don't do that behavior anymore. Yeah, that's the trick. I haven't found it necessary to mug anybody since I got sober. That's an easy one. It hasn't been a week since I've gone 100 miles an hour on one of the roads close to my house. I'm not ready to give that one up yet. Yeah, well, it's judgment. The eighth step, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became entirely ready to make amends to them all. List is easy. You did it in your fourth step. Talked about it in your fifth. People don't talk about this too much, but 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 all run together. Prepare, execute, prepare, execute, prepare, execute. You've already got a list for the eighth step. Because you've been sober longer, you got a few more names to put on it. Then the hard part. Can you drive a truck through the second half of the eighth step? Bet your ass. Except where it would harm somebody. Well, hell, it's going to hurt me if it doesn't hurt anybody else. Doesn't work. Make the list, talk it over with your sponsor, because you need to talk it over with somebody who can look at it objectively and say, no, Jesus, don't tell him you slept with his wife. This is not a good plan. Going to work something else out here. I had stolen a lot of money. My sponsor had me give $100 a week to the Volunteers of America for 2 years. I didn't like that. I do feel pretty even, however. So that's what it's supposed to do. The ninth step, make direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. Make the amends. Don't expect it to go any way. If you do, it won't work. Just go make them. The responsibility I have accepted is not yours, it's theirs. You got to do it to get right with you. Clean your side of the street. Remember those 2 ex-wives? I called them up. I said, hey, girls, I'd like to make some amends for you. I didn't do it this way. I'm only kidding about that. I had a lot of fear about this. And I called them up, and they talked it over. I have to accept this responsibility. I'm the one that got them to live together. So they called me back together. Said, sure, we'll listen to you. How about now we're both here? As a sponsor, I advise people not to do this. My sponsor lacked experience. You know those clay feet we hear about? He's supposed to know everything. Well, he missed on this one. Clearly, this was not a good idea. I went out there and sat down in that living room, and you'd have thought that I was the sheriff of Nottingham and they were Robin Hood. This was a bloody, bloody deal. And it took a long, long time. Tell you what, though, the end result was, the upshot was, it was worth it. My father died 2 months after I got home from Vietnam. I was neither in a sensitive position to be aware of the fact that situations were tough. I didn't have any particular feelings one way or the other about the death of my father at that time. Death was not a new thing to me. However, at my ninth step, my sponsor brought my father up, and he was not on my list, on my eighth step list. And the upshot of it was that I went to the cemetery, and I sat down next to his grave, and I was going to talk, tell it for about 10 or 15 minutes and make some amends. And I ended up staying there for 2.5 hours. I believe that he heard me. That's the deal. I believe that. So that helps. Because I didn't know what to do, but my sponsor did. One of the keys of this program is we don't know how to take care of ourselves and fix our own problems. And that's why you ask out. See, that's the deal. That's what's going on. I want to wrap this up because I know time is getting late. It's the 10th step is continue to take a personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. Now, I don't know if it's still available, but there used to be an orange card that was a 10th step checklist. I still have one of those somewhere. But for 30 days, my sponsor made me fill one of those out. And then once a week, I got together and we talked them over. And I get the people I sponsor to do the same things as well. At night, when I turn off the lights, I do that inventory. It's not complicated. I just think over my day. And if something pops into my mind and I feel good about it, all right. If I don't feel good about it, then I trot it out there and look at it. Because I am not a first-nighter. And I don't want to be responsible anymore. If I have hurt you, I want you to know it. I want to take that responsibility. I have to do that. I really have to. And I do it all the time, and well, I don't think so. To the best of my ability, yeah. The 11th step, sought through prayer and meditation to improve my conscious contact with God as I understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for me and the power to carry that out. Well, that's the deal, and that's important. It's important for me, because until I located some sense of a higher power, I wasn't easy in this program. And I don't mean easy like it was easy to be in the program. I meant fitting in. And because of that, I try to pray today, and I'm going to tell you how I do it. In the morning, when I wake up, I say, "Good morning, God. My name's Chip, and I'm an alcoholic, and I don't want to take a drink or hurt anybody today." And at night, I say, "Thanks for another day of sobriety, and tomorrow I like to start again." Now, I do a whole lot of other stuff, but those two things I do. I meditate in the car. It's real easy for me. I don't think driving takes much attention. I don't recommend that. That's the way I do it. So I pray and meditate, and I work on it, because I do believe, you know, I saw two people that I care for greatly in here look at each other today, and I know that they love one another. And that's an exhibition of God in this program, as far as I'm concerned. And I see that all the time. I see it in your faces, and you see it in mine, because that's what's going on here. Don't let that slide. The 12th step, having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, we practice these principles in all our, carry this message to alcoholics and practice these principles in all our affairs. My memorization is not great here. Having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, if you do the first 11, you get the first sentence of the 12th step. That is not tough. That's not tough. And I just gave you a way to do it. And it works. And it's not the only way by any means. If there are 600 people in this room tonight, there are 600 ways to work this program. And they all work. That's the wonder of it. It cuts to fit. It says in the big book, the only requirement is a willingness to begin. There you go. Practice these principles for me is trying not to hurt anybody and doing the best I can to practice the golden rule as I understand it, which is just to live to good purpose today. As it says in the 12 and 12, and I hate this, character building for character building's sake. Ugh. Yeah. And carrying a message. The people on this committee, you know, the people that set up the chairs, the people that make coffee at a meeting, you know, those people that come an hour before and make coffee and do all those things, that's carrying the message. How many of you, and I'm not asking for a show of hands here, have been to an institution committee group meeting, wherever your particular intergroup happens to be? Those people have a thankless job. That's carrying the message. You know, there's millions of ways to carry the message. And if you do it, it feels good. That's why we carry this. And that's why I work with people that are new in this program. It seems to be what I can do. You know, I have friends who do wonderful things on committees. I'm no good at that. But I seem to get along with sponsoring people, so I do a lot of that. Doesn't make any difference. Find out what's right for you and do it. And don't stop doing it. Because we all know people, if you come around here long, who gain and maintain long-term sobriety and lose it. And I've had sobriety and lost it. And I get it because I get out of the steps of my program. It's not worth giving up. And isn't that wonderful? And that's what this is all about. And that's why I'm so glad, so very glad to be here tonight. It works. It works for me. And if it works for me, Bill Brooks said this to me at a meeting after I was about 3 years sober. He pointed to me at Ellicott City Tuesday night. He was talking to some new guy. He said, "See him? If he can get sober, anybody can." Now, frankly, I think he's got a resentment because I went out on him. You know, but I don't know that for sure. Okay, last thing I'm going to say is this, because I always close with this, and it's not an original with me. I got it off a speaker named Jack Sullivan, in the early 80s, back on one of my sojourns sobriety. And the deal is this. This couple got together in this little Midwestern town, and it was love. It was so wonderful. And they were just the apple of the town's eye. He was just a wonderful guy and hardworking, and she was just great as the woman in the scenario. And they got married, and it was just as idyllic as you thought it would be. It was wonderful. And he went to work, and she took care of the house and the children, this, that, and the other thing. But one day, he stopped at the tavern on the way home and had a drink. And a couple of days later, he stopped and he had a couple of drinks. And as time went by, he stopped every night and he got drunk. And he started coming home drunk and passing out. And after about a year of this, the girl went to see her father. Father was the undertaker. And she said, "Dad, I don't know what to do. The guy is drunk all the time and I love him, but I don't know what to do." And they thought about it for a while, and they went up to the house, you know, and they made some preparations, and He came home and he passed out on the couch, and the preparations came into view, and they picked him up and they put him in a coffin, and they had dug a hole in the front yard. They put him in it and they buried it. They buried him. Stuck a pipe down there so he could breathe. A couple hours later he wakes up. Well, you know what it's like to wake up from being drunk. Oh. And he's scrabbling on the inside of the coffin, and he's groaning. You know where he is, don't know what's going on. And the undertaker leans over the little pipe, and he says, "Hello?" And the guy says, "Who's that?" Undertaker says, "Oh, just a friend." He says, drunk says, "Where am I?" Undertaker looked down the pipe. He says, "You're dead." He says, "Oh my God. Well, what about you?" And the Undertaker says, "Well, I'm dead too." And the guy thought about this for a few minutes. And he said, "Well, how long have I been dead?" The Undertaker says, "About an hour and a half." And he thought about that for a minute. He said, "Well, how long have you been dead?" Undertaker said, "About 10 years. And drunk thought about it for a minute. And he says, "Well, hell, if you've been dead for 10 years, you ought to know where a fella can get a drink around here." You gotta do that.